welcome to the channel. I'm Summer. I am so excited for today's haircut. I'm going to be cutting on long hair. We're going to be talking about how to get lots of layers and movement while keeping long hair looking thick and full as possible. This is even going to work for those of you with thinner, more fine hair, how to cut the layers to keep a nice thick perimeter. Let's get started. Okay, so before we get started, I want to show you guys her in all of her long hair glory. She has got some length on here. I'm gonna push all the hair back behind the shoulders so we can get a really good look at it. It is quite long. It has a decent amount of thickness in general. Our ponytail is quite thick and nice, but we definitely have some length that we're gonna need to be taking a look at. So I'm just gonna spin her so that way you can really see all of the hair. And then this is with everything brought over on top of her shoulders. So the goal with this cut is going to be keeping as much length as possible with our long hair, but adding in layers so we have a movement, but also keeping a thick, full perimeter so the ends look nice and thick. This is such a common problem with people. They want a lot of layers, a lot of movement, but sometimes then the baseline ends up getting collapsed and thinned out. So I'm gonna show you the best way I like to go about in the salon, especially with long hair, maintaining shape and layers where you get movement, but you still have this really nice thick and full look. Because as the hair is now, if you take away these ends, it's very beautiful, it's very thick. So we're gonna take a look at these ends here. And I had to sit today because her hair is so long. I want you guys, let me make sure she's centered for you. I want you guys to take a look at the length. Sorry. There we go. We're gonna take a good look at this length here and figure out where it is we need to bring it up. So I'm going to assume that this is like a client who maybe they haven't had their hair cut in 6 months, maybe to a year, so they're a bit straggly. You can see the length comes all the way down to here, but it is super, super thin and sparse. But you will also have this rounding. So you would need to, with your client, so whether you're a stylist or you're a client in the chair or you're cutting at home, determine how much length you think you need to remove to make it look thick and full. Because if you don't bring up enough length and you leave the sparseness, no matter how perfect the layers are, you're gonna look more thin than you want. So what I like to do is point out to the client what I see, make sure they're comfortable with it. So what I'm gonna do with all of her hair pulled back behind her head so I can see how it's laying, we're literally gonna be rounding with this shape so we maintain the round and softness, but we're gonna just be removing literally what's needed so it looks nice and thick, so then we can determine our point of layers. So if you wanna start out removing less hair at first, you can. So even just doing that, still not enough. You can see the gap here. So I basically need to come right about there. So we're gonna come in and just remove that length. I'm gonna use my comb as my guide. So when you're doing a cut like this where you're determining where to remove the length, I always recommend cutting it dry. You're gonna just see and have more control. We're gonna come over to the other side and just follow through. Just a little bit on this corner. So that already, you've taken away all those straggly ends. I have a little bit of a concern in this little corner here that we go and blend into the sides. But for right now, I think that matches up really well. It looks a lot more thick and full. So now we can determine where to cut our layers. Okay, so now that we have our stragglies are gone, I might clean that up a little bit more to make sure it's 100% even, but that is the basis of how I would determine it with the client in my chair. We're now going to separate the front from the sides, and I'm just gonna clip that out of the way. And we're gonna be doing this cut completely dry today. So I've just separated right at the ear here, and this is gonna get clipped forward, so I'm not touching it. Now we're going to determine in our back length where it is that we can add some shape with our layers while still maintaining a thick and full line. So how I like to do that, I will come in and feel the head where it starts curving right at that occipital bone. We're gonna take this hair, I'm gonna glide across, do that on both sides, and we're gonna take a look at what our perimeter now looks like having removed that hair. And the reason for this is because this hair is gonna be what we use to start creating our layers. So this is where you're gonna be removing technically a lot of weight. So you need to come in and see, well, how much does that collapse the perimeter? Time out, I gotta fix her cape. There we go, now you guys will be able to see that better. So we wanna take a look and find out how much of the perimeter still remains looking thick and full. So it's still a nice line. I feel like honestly we could bring up the length more to make it look even more thick, but overall this is somebody who really wants to see that length. So you can see what it looks like there, and then this is what it looks like when you let the hair come back over. It immediately thickens up. So we know already that we don't want to take a layer that's going to be cutting in to removing too much from that perimeter. We want it to look as thick and full as possible. So even if that layer came down to all the way there, you still have where the hair looks a little sparse. So if you drop that, it instantly looks a little bit more thick. So the point basically that I'm trying to make is that you always have to have an idea of where to start your layers so you maintain that weight line through the ends to keep it nice, thick and full. So that way when this hair goes forward, it's still gonna look thick and full. So now that I have determined that, I'm gonna clip this out of the way so I don't touch that length at all. And so all of this hair here is gonna be what we are using to create our layers. And we're essentially going to do what I call my surface layers, because it's just gonna be this top outer layer of the hair that we're gonna create that shape and movement, but you're still gonna maintain all that thickness that we've now sectioned off. So I'm gonna do this very similar to just my standard round layers. And why I'm doing that is because it's going to allow me to really make sure that this bottom section of our layers falls out and gives us a little bit more of a weight line here to keep that nice, thick and full. So we're gonna come in, and if you wanna go ahead and split this into threes just so you have a little bit more control, that's completely fine. And we're gonna take our first section right in the middle. So what I mean with surface layers, we're coming in and we're gonna round out with it. I'm letting that perimeter fall completely and I'm twisting my fingers. So we're skimming just the top section. We're not jeopardizing the weight line of the base of our layer. So again, we're gonna come out, you're twisting, letting that bottom piece fall, and now we're gonna cut. You're gonna do the same thing as you move up. So we're further up the head, we're coming out, we are twisting. That little bit of hair falls and we cut. Now we're gonna come all the way to the top, twisting again. So my fingers went up to the ceiling and I have just this little bit that's gonna angle out quite nice. So what that does is that creates a very soft shape and a long layer with some movement. Not to say we can't come in and add more, but this is where our shortest piece is, right here. So we have quite the gap, but look at how thick and full it is. So when I go to style this later, you're gonna see more of that shape with the layers. Right now, I have had her flat ironed out so we can really get a good look at the hair. And then after, when we get it styled and blown out, you'll see more shape with the layers. So we're coming out twisting. All that hair has fallen. I can see my previous guide here and cut. So with longer lengths, you are a little limited in how short you can go with the layers, because if I come in here and I cut this piece, let's say to just boom, right here, I've got to blend in all of this hair. And when you have to blend in all of this hair, it's all that it's doing is taking away from this weight line down here to keep the hair looking nice, thick, and full. So you do have to keep that in mind. Not to say you can't do a little bit shorter layers on that very top layer, which we'll probably play around with, but everything has to flow and blend. You can see all this hair that I'm cutting. I've let that hair fall out, cut. And then I'm rounding with the head. And as you get into the corner, you'll have a little less hair to cut. So this hair right behind the ear, I'm pulling it back slightly towards me. And we have just a little bit. We can bring that all the way up to the top. And just barely. Now we're going to repeat on the other side. We're going to come back into that middle section to grab our previous guide. You're just going to do the same thing of twisting, pulling it out, letting that hair fall, cut. Next section. We have our last corner piece. I'll show it to you guys. So we're back at this ear section. So I'm going to grab that and we're over directing it back slightly while twisting. Just a little bit of hair here. That hair has fallen at the perimeter and cut. So now we have the bulk of our back cut. Let's check this top layer. So I'm going to come straight across here, right at the crown. We're going to check our length. Just a little bit here. Sometimes I always end up, I feel like, let's see what, I'm right-handed, I cut right-handed. This is the left side. I usually on that top layer sometimes will cut one side shorter than the other, or I'll like lose my guide if you take too big of sections. But it also allows you to shorten it up some, but look how perfectly that blends in. So now what we're gonna do is take bigger sections and see if we need to cut anywhere else to make that flow, which is just right in this middle here. Grab my edge. Right there. And just a little here. Okay, so look at that movement, and it's not even styled to be bouncy. So what I'm gonna do now is let out this perimeter section that we did not want to jeopardize. And it still looks nice and thick, but you have your shortest piece comes all the way up to here. But because we focused it more on that outer surface with the sections, that's why we pull out and twist and let the hair below fall, because it maintains all of the weight here, but you still get this nice movement and shape through the rest of the hair. And I will be very excited to blow this out later. So now we're gonna come into blending the sides. And before I do that really quickly, I am just gonna look at this perimeter one time to make sure it's completely even, just because we did do it a little fast. So you would just bring it down, same as always. I think she's pretty good. Yeah, not really anything there. I haven't sat down to do a haircut on a mannequin in a long while. And so now we're gonna take a look at our sides and how we're gonna blend those in. So what I'm gonna do, let me bring her back up now, just a little bit. We're gonna take a look at, do we need to cut any of this length to match into this back perimeter? So we're just gonna pull that straight down. I have got just a little bit. I have some concern for the sparsity here, but we'll see how much of that gets removed with the face frame. And a little bit there. We're gonna repeat on the other side. We have just a little bit. Okay, so now this is where I always say is the fun part of any haircut, is creating our face frame. I love a good face frame. All right, so we're gonna use this, same idea. They wanna leave a lot of length. They want it to look thicker. So if I were to be honest with a client in salon, I would suggest coming in and removing essentially all of this for the face frame. It just looks very sparse. You can see where this looks a little thicker, then it's thinner right in here, gets a little thicker. There's not a whole lot of like evenness to the density, where this side, it's not quite as much of a problem, which is actually very accurate to a lot of people's hair. One side can often be thicker than the other. So if I group this together, it looks a little bit better, but I can still see right in here, that definitely needs to get removed. So what I'm gonna do to start off first blending this, because this is gonna be under the guise of we wanna keep the length, but we want it to look healthy, thick and full. I'm gonna first just basically work on blending in this section in here. This is definitely where the gaping kind of begins, and we wanna blend it into this thickness. So we're gonna actually start behind the face a little bit. And all we're gonna do is do like a normal face frame, and I'm gonna come in at an angle first and just glide right down. So I'm gonna take a look, and we're gonna start by just blending into that. I'm not gonna go up much higher with the angle. I wanna keep it long at first to take a look at it. So same thing, this is where my previous guide was, so I'm just gonna follow suit and go right into that. So even that looks a little bit better as far as the thickness. You remove some of that length, but you still have this weight, but it doesn't look quite as sparse. So I would have the client look at their hair in the mirror, say, how do you feel about it? Do you think you want a little bit shorter pieces, maybe right around the face, so you get a little bit more swoop and bend? Or if they wanted to leave it at this length, they perfectly can. They very much so can. Mixing up my words today. But if I were to do a personal recommendation, I would just nick up this a little bit more. It's still well below the chin. You're gonna be able to pull that back into a ponytail, but you're gonna get a lot more movement and shape around the face. So it's gonna open up the face. It's not gonna look like the hair is just hanging here, dragging it down. And then I would probably just right in here, nip that little bit to blend it in a little bit more. So Like I said, this is pretty long, which is fine if that's what you want, but if you want a little bit more movement and shape in the face, I would shorten this up so when it goes and it flows everywhere, you go to curl it, you're gonna have much more movement and that beautiful face is gonna get to show. So if you have really good cheekbones, nice jaw structure, you're gonna be able to show off those features of your face. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna come in and just nick that right there. So you could choose to come right up into that. So the hair is combed straight down. I'm gonna lightly clean this up right here. I can see where my angle is just slightly off. And then we're gonna come in a little bit more. And this is still really just skimming that outer layer. We are not cutting so far into this where we're removing, you know, this whole huge section here. It's just softening it up a little bit. So we're gonna skim this outer edge. So I'm gonna take it, come across the face, so I'm preserving some length. I'm all the way almost to the other shoulder blade. And we're gonna come in and we're just gonna sliver straight down. So we didn't remove a bunch of hair, very little. And that just softened it up the perfect amount. It's very soft, very subtle. It doesn't even look like a ton, but it makes a world of a difference to flow everywhere. And now all we're gonna do is match this up now on the other side. So what I like to do first is we're gonna check our edges, the lengths I should say. This needs to come up a tiny bit. And we're gonna start by grabbing our other piece of hair here and just slowly at a time matching that up. I feel like you guys can't see her. There we go. So we just need to skim this. We're gonna come up from an angle and blend into that at first. That's blending in. We're both here at the same point. And then we're gonna continue to do that same thing. So just grab a little bit of hair at a time. We're gonna comb down. I see my shortest pieces here, so I need to come down to my longer point. We're gonna start further down because I would rather have more length that needs to be removed. And we're gonna blend right into that. Start further down and just blend right up into that. Again, we want to keep it as thick as possible. Let's take a look. I need to clean up just a little in here. She's a little bit longer in this corner. So just that little bit right there. And just skim right into it. Now she still is a little bit thicker. Like I said, a lot of times one side of the hair is often thicker than the other. I struggle with this in my own hair. But I feel like that's looking very well blended. So now we have created our face fram. We have nice shape. We're gonna see a nice swoop in the hair, but we still have maintained a bunch of this thickness. And now all we're gonna do is just skim and create a little bit more of a layer. But we don't wanna remove a ton because we don't wanna jeopardize the weight that we have. So all we're gonna do, it's the same idea of creating those surface layers. Now I need to lower her. This is the problem with cutting the long mannequins. I feel like I'm all over the place with raising her, lowering her, but we're gonna do the same idea, except we're gonna over direct more. So we're gonna come all the way out and we're lifting, lifting, lifting. You want all of this hair to fall. You do not wanna jeopardize that weight line of your perimeter. So again, lifting, 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 twist. All that hair comes out and we are just skimming that very, very top layer. Same thing, lift all the way up, twisting, all of that perimeter falls. You barely just have any hair here to skim. Just barely. The point with cutting layers and long hair, you have to constantly remember surface layers, maintaining thickness, maintaining weight. When you forget that, that is how you end up cutting too much, too short, and once that length and weight is removed, there is no putting it back until it either grows back in or you get extensions. So those are your two options, which one takes a very long time and the other is very expensive. So always take your time and always remember that. So again, we're coming up, twisting, twisting. I'm maintaining weight, I'm maintaining thickness, and just blend that in. All that hair is dropped, and just skim that top. So you're still gonna come in at an angle a little bit. You're not just gonna cut all of this, you're gonna come in at an angle and point cut into that. And just barely. All right, so let's take a look at her now before I'm gonna spritz her down and I'm gonna blow it out so you can see like some body and bounce, but let's get a good visual before of what it looks like. So we have still a nice, thick, full weight line here. It looks so much better than when we started. There's no like sparsity, there's no like massive disconnect here. It has a nice thick and full look while still being long. And then look at these nice layers here. We have shape, we have movement. When we go to do a nice bouncy blow dry, you're gonna get a lot of that shape and bounce and volume, but it's nice and thick. So there's still movement, but we have nice thickness, which I look for. And then when we come from the front, we're gonna have plenty of movement, but it's still nice and thick. And then we're gonna style this where we get a good swoopy pop with the face frame. So I'm gonna get her rinsed off in the shampoo bowl and then I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like for its final blow dry. All right, here is her finished and final look after giving her a nice bouncy blow dry. I am so happy with how this came out. We maintained so much thickness through that perimeter with the way that we took these layers to cut them. We have plenty of shape and movement. I love all the bend and bounce with these layers. Through the face frame, we have a lot of movement as well. Everything flows and blends together. We have lots of shape, lots of movement, but we still maintain the hair's thickness, which is key. So remember, always think about maintaining that weight line, the thickness in the perimeter. Always remember that when cutting your layers. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. Be sure to let me know what video you'd like to see next, and you can check out this one right here. Thanks for watching. Bye.